to the ABC Podcast.
Always be cool.
The show where your hosts, DC and BK, showcase your local business and real estate pros going gangbusters in leadership, community involvement, and just being cool.
Here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs, mortgage experts at Summit Lending, and partners in crime, Darren Copeland and Bobby Kerr.
All right, everybody, it's the Always Be Cool podcast, hanging out in the Summit Lending Studios with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everyone?
We're very excited today. We have CEO and co-founder of Equity Prime Mortgage, Mr. Eddy Perez.
All right, everyone, here we go. So co-founder and CEO of Equity Prime Mortgage. He's first-generation Cuban American. His father, Bobby, was actually on the Cuban national baseball team. How cool is that?
Very.
Believes home buying is the great American gift. In 2008, he started EPM, which is now a top national lender. They have a mission to empower people and create an even playing field when it comes to the home buying process. He is married to wife Shannon. They have three amazing kids, Gracie, Tripp, and Emery. All around awesome guy, Eddy Perez. Man, welcome to the show. How are you?
All right.
Well, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know what, we were talking about, your dad here in the intro, and we just don't want to gloss over that, man, because you have a really, really cool story about your dad and your family coming over. So, why don't we just start off with that? Let's go with the background and, talk about how your dad was at sea for 3 days and he was homeless for a week, and then he started his own construction company, because that's just a really cool story.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you summed it up. I mean, that's he essentially, just to give a little bit of the backstory, outside of somebody wanting freedom and leaving a country that they once were free, what really motivated him was, unfortunately, he got an intestine infection, and they thought he was starting a coup because he missed practice for 2 days. So then they sent one of his childhood friends to kill him. And my father always said, if you have no God, no country, what do you really have? So he said, yeah, I would have had a decent life being on the Cuban national team, because they did treat the baseball players really well. However, what am I really representing for myself? So that's what really motivated him with 6 others to, as he loved the part of the story, he stole a boat that belonged to the Cuban government. That was the rowboat. He loved that. He said that was his parting, FU shot. And
right.
Yeah, he was homeless his first week in America, sleeping on the beaches of Miami. The funny part about it is he landed the day before Thanksgiving, so he's like, oh, these Americans are so nice. They're giving me all these food. They're walking around. They're everywhere. This is great.
Right.
Like anything else, sometimes in life, timing can really play into your, good fortunes if you let yourself. So
right.
Then he came to Atlanta. He met my mom here. She also was Cuban, but she had a different road. My dad was a true refugee. My mom, and that wet foot, dry foot. My mom, before my grandfather had his assets seized, traded in some of his assets and then sent her to Spain. And then she had to legally immigrate. And she immigrated to Atlanta to be with a family that sponsored her. And coincidentally, my father, because a lot of people are unaware about this, before Miami basically became Cuban haven in the late 50s, early 60s, it was a sleepy Jewish retirement community. So there just wasn't that much opportunity when you got there. In the mid-60s, you were just another Cuban at that point, because they just didn't have as much of an economy. So a lot of people moved. New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Atlanta, Vegas, Downey, California. Those are the areas that a lot of migrated to for opportunity. And my father came to Atlanta and then coincidentally met my mom and started his business in 72. And I was born in 76.
Okay. Very cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
So you mentioned the rowboat, and we've talked about it a couple of times. I know that at your office, you've got something that's a pretty powerful symbol of this journey that your dad took. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? I think that this is a great example for anyone to have this constant reminder of what really got me here and what was part of that journey, to remind me on a daily basis that there's something that's extra special going on.
Yeah, it was one of those. I've thought my father has always been the spiritual founder of this organization, because it was upon his death that I really started to morph from being a broker to becoming a banker, especially with what was going on in the industry. I knew that at some point in time, we'd be able to serve that community, but I had to go become a lender to do that, to serve it on a broader scale, just with what was going down on the news and everything of that nature. And sorry, somebody was waving at my camera.
That's all right.
It goes, throws me off like that way. Anyway, I wanted it to be something more than what it was and really represent his journey here because, yes, my father pointed it out well to me that I don't want to say there's a confusion. It's just maybe my interpretation's a little bit different. That the American dream, you always hear about the story, is for the 7.3 billion people not in this country. Once you're here, it's a gift. That's why I call it the American gift. And yes, home ownership, for a lot of people that don't understand, is essentially the guardian of freedom, which freedom has two parts to it. A lot of people know about liberty, but there's also self-responsibility. And the first thing that, in communist and these repressive governments do is they take away your property rights. So we really are on the forefront of letting everybody, if they want to do what they want to do, want to wear what they want to wear, want to act the way they want to act, that they're given that opportunity. And even on the, say they don't become a homeowner and they live in an apartment, that still provides great things to the investors and the people that own it too. So it winds up being just a very good system to propel democracy and everything of that nature.
So, sorry, can you talk about the symbolism that you have there in the office for everybody?
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
I wanted something to represent my father, and there had been my father, right about 15, I asked him, how the heck did you do it? Because I started realizing the gravity of the situation. Because when you're younger, my dad came here in a rowboat, but then when you think about it from a physical exertion, I'd gotten into sports. I'm like, dude, that is intense.
Right.
That's when he told me, that freedom is everything, freedom of spirit, freedom of religion, freedom of being who you want to be, freedom, financial freedom. And essentially, that symbolism is the rowboat. Obviously, it's a lot nicer than what he came in, but jokingly, when I would make an excuse or say I'm going to do something I would, my dad would say, well, son, with that attitude, the rowboat wouldn't have made it here, and I wouldn't have met your mother, and you wouldn't exist. So that left a very positive impression, believe it or not. It wasn't like he didn't say it in a, douchey way to try to get your child to comply or to try to control him. He was just like, look, these are the decisions that you're making that will shortchange you if you let it. So he was very good at teaching me about self-sabotage. So that's where I say the symbolism is the boat. And when people visit, I'm having people sign it. We just kicked it off. I think organizations that not only have a mission and purpose for what they're doing, which fortunately for us, everybody in this industry should, just because of what I just talked about, what it does, not only for freedom, but as we know, when you're free, your mental health is better. So there's so much that we do for our fellow Americans. And you have to take that very serious. And the best way a lot of times is symbolism. It's why, sports team have mascots. That's all a form of symbolism that really propels people to really understand and relate. Because at times, people have kind of misunderstood me. They've kind of not understand some of my altruistic nature. And then when they kind of peel back the onion and see what's going on, they see that there's a lot more to it. Because like I say, my father was very good and my mother as well. And my mother's still alive, thank God. And my father passed 15 years ago, so this is really a tribute to him and the story. That's why our American Gift, our tag conference, will forever be in South Florida because that's where my father got here. So that's where we held it this year for the first time. As well as a lot of people had said if it's that time of year, we would wish it somewhere warm. How things work out. South Florida is even warm in that time frame, so it works out well for everything that we're trying to accomplish. So that's just the symbolism to let people represent that. It's the award, and I created it for him, was called, Rowboat My Father. But then I said to everybody else when I gave the speech about it, it's really Rowboat My Friends. Everybody has a rowboat in their life. Maybe not exactly like my story, but there's something that really turned them for the better, or something that they're really striving to do. If they're not a nihilist, and if they are, that's just a process of figuring it out. Because I think all of us at some point in time have been lost on our purpose and mission and just weren't aware. So I encourage it, but it's one of those. It's when you're going through a difficult situation, my perspective is real easy because I always tell myself, well, it's not like at 24 years old, the first person in my family to leave, to be completely alone, that I'm going to be homeless for a week at 24 years old without the language, and then possibly dying at sea, because they say 30-40% die at sea that tried to do the voyage. So
Wow.
So no matter what my headaches are, I lean more towards being fortunate because I get to have these headaches.
Well, and the great thing that we love about that, Eddy, is, sounds like, your parents were just amazing people, just laying the groundwork, being the examples. And I love that you have the tag event down in South Florida. By the way, we will not miss that ever again. We will make sure our spring training plans are set correctly the next time for that, for sure, man. So we appreciate
I
you.
understand.
Yeah, exactly. But that's an amazing story. So talk about, your mom real quick, and then we'll get into a little bit more on the business side. But I saw in one of the interviews that you did, on your mom that, from your mom, you learned tenacity, grit, and courage. And like you said, it's a blessing that she's still around. So, I'm married to, my wife is part Latin. She's from Mexico, and she's fiery, man. So I can't even imagine. So does mom kind of have that Latin fire in her as well?
My mom kind of grew up, the sad part is, not sad, she grew up a little bit as a debutante, so she's more of a goody-goody.
Okay.
She's got some zest to her, but I'd say that her zest is a very quiet confidence because, sometimes I don't highlight her enough, and I need to do a better job of that. But, when I was 17, 1 month before my 18th birthday, that's why I said about tenacity, my parents and I were told that my mom had 6 months to live because she hadn't gotten a mammogram for 10 years and she had stage 4 breast cancer.
Wow.
And they said the only reason she's going to see my 18th birthday is because it's a month away. I'll be 47 in August, so it's been a long 6 months.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very grateful
Right.
for that, because especially after my father passed, coming up on 16 years ago, me and my mom were there for each other because it was very tough on us. We both had our anxieties about it, and stress and pain, and we were able to be there for each other because my father was so important to both of us because of how supportive he was and how much he believed in each of us and how much he encouraged it. Even when we were down, he was very good at putting on the brave face. When I look back on it now as an adult, I know that he probably was scared or definitely stressed, which is unfortunately part of the reason he didn't take care of his health. He just, owning a construction company, he ate fast food once or twice a day, and that's why I really made it a mission to take care of my health, physical, mental, and emotional, and really stress that out there because he had a lot of regrets, and I never was mad at him for passing. A lot of people said during my grievance counseling that was normal, but I had nothing. I had an idol. People wish. I say this all the time. I won the lottery of parents. I really can't say.
The birth lottery.
Yeah, I can't really say much more than that outside of, regardless of what somebody else may have more. I'm not going to knock other parents out there. I would just say that they're maybe tied with my parents, but my parents definitely deserve to be in the Hall of Fame of parents. There's no child could really ask for a better, not even just example. They even showed it. They demonstrated it. They brought it along. They brought people in. They showed me a lot on folks will be there for you if you're there for them, and you got to build trust by delivering results first. So,
Absolutely.
Honestly, it's
a lot of tenacity.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why we love doing this show, because it doesn't matter if it's somebody leader in the mortgage industry or a professional athlete. These same type of stories always come back, and so it makes the conversation universal, that we can talk about grit and tenacity being the lessons that you learned from your mom, or your dad teaching you how to be a great father and a great mentor to other people. And it just doesn't matter what you do or who's listening to this show, they're going to pull something from that.
Because it always comes back to people having the right mentors in their life, right? Having those mentors, and especially for you, Eddy, getting to know you and seeing your company. But the one word that really comes to me when talking about Eddy Perez is clarity. You have such clarity of your goals and what you expect of people. Some people never really get that type of clarity in life. So kudos to you, man. You guys are doing an amazing thing. Obviously we have a mortgage brokerage here in Kansas City, and you guys are one of our partners. Shameless plug. We literally just locked a $400,000 FHA loan with you just a few minutes ago.
Thanks.
But so tell us a little bit about your career history. You owned a brokerage, then you created the bank. Kind of walk us through your career path.
So I graduated in 1999 in finance from Georgia State University, and I got into stocks. And the reason I tell you that part of the story is because I'll tell you what made me morph in 2007. So it gave me some great ad lib on the spot. But in 2001, for the youngsters out there, there was this thing called the dot-com crash that really did hurt the economy. And that's when you started seeing regulations come down and really people talk about, oh, it's the stockbroker that's to blame. And that's why I say is I really lean on responsibility. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that some stockbrokers probably didn't encourage for a commission, but I remember, I'm not exaggerating, a guy that was shining my shoes when I was going for my interview, giving me stock tips. And, Warren Buffett says it best, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. And when the shoes shine, no offense, he ran a good little business, but he's telling me how to trade these stocks and do options. I'm like, oh my God, that's when you got to leave every conversation. And I've kind of followed that philosophy. So when that happened, I tried to stick around, but I was young. And stigmas get pushed on you like, oh, you put me in this bad stock. Not that the whole market just got beat up and there was really an inflated bubble. And outside of Amazon, not a whole lot of .coms really ever survived.
Right.
They survive and thrive now because, ironically, what's funny is I always thought they were just ahead of their time. That's all they were. I think it was going to become a huge thing. It's just the ease to tech, just being able to have, your cell phone do stuff. I wasn't there yet. So it was more of they were just ahead of their time. Mm-hmm. But then in 2002, I decided, my now wife, girlfriend at the time, tells me how her hairdresser's husband is in mortgages and loving it. And having grown up in finance and having grown up because my father was a residential contractor, I saw the powers of home ownership, what it stood for. I had studied finance, so I understood the demographics of that and how that worked for everybody. So I answered as, once again, showing my age, monster.com ad to start at what later I what we could call was a little bit of a sweatshop, but, it taught me exactly what not to do. And then I moved on and just kept originating, and about a year or two later, my father introduced me to some of his builder clients. So then I had my own referrals from agents, builder, I kind of had a mix of business. And then I decided in 2005 to go out on my own. It's just a journey. My father was an entrepreneur and my uncle and a lot of family members were. And, I at least had to give it a shot to see if I truly enjoyed it. And, I can honestly say I've had some long days, but the years have gone by fast and they've been phenomenal just with the amount of impact that you can make on others and lift them up. So, I started off as a broker in 2005, and then 2007, right after my father's death, October of 2007, Jamie Dimon gets on and says that brokers are to blame. That was the identical thing they were saying in 2001. They just changed from stock to mortgage. And I said, oh, I've been down this party, and I've already been, hung by the cross once. So I see what's coming. So it was basically you either had to go all the way in or you had to go all the way out. And sure enough, it's not that I had some sort of collective wisdom and I was so brilliant and saw it. I'd already been there. So if you've seen the movie, you kind of know the ending or where it's at least going. And sure enough, so many people pulled out of wholesale. It only went down to, a couple of lenders, UWM being one, that pretty much kept that side of the business alive. So I give them a lot of respect for that. And test of time. And then I said, when I have my approvals and I'm ready and I've built enough of a business, I'm going to go back into that space. And then I did in 2014. And like anybody else, when you move from, retail and then you start opening up wholesale, you make a lot of mistakes because even though, I say this all the time, it's kind of like a purchase and refi. Even though it's still a mortgage, they have two different personalities and you better not kid yourself about that one. And it's because, if on the retail side, they're W-2, so they're your own employee. The other side's 1099, so there's a little bit more entrepreneurial spirit. Those carry two different personalities. Nothing bad, nothing wrong. It's just really understanding your wherewithal. That also means your production staff has a little bit of a different mindset too. And you have to understand who likes one bucket versus the other. And you just got to be that honest and really lean into it and let people know what the guidelines are, and thank you so much for clarity, because that's actually something I've been working on, is trying to impeccably communicate clearly, because at times I thought I said it, and then I guess I didn't say it clear enough. So I've learned how to do that and lean in the right way so that people know the direction that we're going in. That's it. I mean, I went from A to Z. You know, we're a full servicer now as well, and just really, really enjoy what we do as an industry. I don't think people really realize the impact of what it does for this country, and even on the global scale. I don't think people really know the magnitude, but when you're moving trillions with an S and multi-trillions, you've got a huge impact on people.
Oh, absolutely. And you bring up a good point, Eddie. I think there's a lot of loan originators and managers out there that they don't really think about the impact that they have to the end consumer, right? Because everyone remembers when they bought their first house or their move-up house. Like, everyone remembers their first interest rate. I remember I would tell everyone my first interest rate, and everyone's like, wow, that's really high. And now we're pretty close to where my first interest rate was.
No, we're definitely where I was. We're definitely when I was.
Exactly. But, it's not just another number. It's not another transaction or a conventional deal or VA. I mean, you're dealing with a family that's getting into a home where they're going to have holidays together. They're just doing life together. It's so impactful. So what we do is tremendous. And what I'm so excited about, because I was on the retail side for many, many years, came back to the broker side 4 years ago and started our shop here in Kansas City. And we're just so excited with, the way that the market's going, and that brokers are better and giving a better product and price to the end consumer, because, we don't have the 3 layers of management. We don't have the $1 million trip for the award ceremony to Hawaii for everyone. And I want to thank you for everything that you do, man, because I've noticed personally, just in the last 2 years, how far EPM has come and the changes that they've done to keep up with the ever-changing market. But also, again, the podcast, ABC Always Be Cool, but that's what you guys are doing now. You guys are just being cool and helping out your referral partners out there. So anything you want to touch base in that regard?
Well, I'm glad you say that, because it's been a journey. I mean, we definitely have screwed it up over the years quite a bit. So I'm very
we all have.
Where we are. So I'm very glad at where we are now, because it was a journey at times. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that I wasn't going to raise the white flag, but I knew it was going to be part of the landscape in the future. You see, when I got in the business, it was about every 2 out of 3 loans were done either wholesale or non-del, and then the other third was done retail. And I think we're heading back to that fashion, because at the end of the day, I think retail can function if it doesn't have all those layers. So it's got to be a very similar competing model. It's just, you want to be, if you want wholesale, you do it one way, you want retail the other. But either way, it's got to be something that at least comes close. But, we're in an industry that unfortunately, margins exploded, and so does the expense to originate. I think the reverse is going to happen unless there's QE, and I don't see that happening again. It's going to be about shrinking margins, and then how do you have the transparency and the ability to really perform at that level? And I think that, organizations that really embrace that can do very well. It's just huge culture shock. And like anything else, so many people had so much success for so long. They're just waiting for it to turn. And I think there's been an evolution, because I'm not sure if people realize, I think this is more of a changing of the guard. And once again, I'm not saying that to try to be Nostradamus. I was at the last one, and I got explained by the veterans that were on their second go-around, like I am now, on what a change in the guard looks like, and it's identical. Even everything that they predicted. So it was one of these. I just had the information from great people that mentored me, like you said, is so crucial in life, who basically spelled out that every 14 to 16 years there's a change in the guard. And when you think about that very unemotionally, it makes sense, because, you get in, say, your 20s or 30s. It takes about 20 years to really get to that executive level, or, you can get to be an owner. But I always say this: if you survive for 10 years, what you come to realize is after 10 years, you probably don't know what you're really doing, but you know that you're good enough to keep going. So you got to get a little bit better. And that makes sense. So in your upper 30s to 40s is when you hit your stride. And they say in business, 42 to 57 is kind of that prime, like in baseball, 22 to 37. 27, obviously, in baseball is such a milestone. Yep. 26 to 28 is such a milestone of when people go to that next level. So that makes sense. Those people that got in there, it's been 14, 16 years, and that's why you're seeing so many retirements is, look, they're grandparents or they want to do other things with their life. They've had a great career, and every time there's always a huge run-up of the best time of their life. So why not leave with multiple championships? It's kind of that mindset. And for some of us, I love what I'm doing, and I'm not of that age. So, I was very young in the last changing of the guard, and this is what's going on now. And that's okay. It'll be new things that come about, and we'll do well as an industry because of what we do for our fellow man. It's just so impactful. Like I say, the commercial side moves about $1 trillion. The residential side moves 2 or more trillion a year on average. Then when you think about real estate as a sector and the services, you're talking about it has a $6 to $7 trillion net effect on GDP. And if that puts you into perspective, that's like the GDP of Japan.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I just our housing,
massive.
Yeah, and then think about what you do. You can help veterans, because of their loans. You can help the rural communities that have been left back with the USDA. There's just first-time home buyers, so much FHA or lower down payment conventional. There's so many great options. Even now, with self-employed with bank statements that you can now do those non-QMs, you can meet a lot of people's needs. And at the end of the day, people want to have value and know that they provided an impact. And we get to do that.
I think part of what you're talking about with these pivots that we see every 14 to 16 years, it also, like every single day as a company, as a successful company, you're pivoting a little bit each and every day to make sure that we're always serving people, right? So we talk about this with our team members. We always have. And so when I read this about you, I was like, Eddy gets it. This is going to go great. You talk about believing, like your perfect example or perfect recipe for being able to reflect and pivot and become better every day comes from the recipe that your parents gave you, right? The grit, the tenacity, and the love. And so getting 1% better each and every day is something that you always talk about with your team members. We do the same thing. I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's essentially the entire premise of the book is getting 1% better so that by the end of the year, you're actually 37% better. But the quote, if you were able to improve by 1% each and every day for a year, those gains compound, right? It goes on to say it's the little choices and small habits that transform a person gradually, whether it be beneficial habits that uplift or unhelpful ones that gradually erode. And so I think a lot of these companies, when they don't constantly improve, they work themselves out after those 16-year cycles, right? Or they continue to grow just like you're doing with EPM. So what are some of the things that you guys are doing on the daily basis or on the yearly, if you want to look at it from a macro level, to constantly improve by 1% each and every day?
I'm a huge advocate on what's going to get you there. I talked about it at TAG, which is what I consider the mental fitness and the 3 pillars of mental fitness, which is mental health, mental wellness, and mental strengthening. What I define them is a little bit different. Mental health to me is your diet, water intake, sleep, mindfulness, meditation, everything of that nature is really what strives your mental health. I've even thrown in there a little crazy, but I've decided to give up warm showers for the year and just do cold showers because of what they do for not only your health, and I know that's become a big craze, but I don't think I can do the plunges just yet. So the showers are a little bit easier, even though I'm doing them for 6 minutes. But and even as little as putting oxygen in your water, just so many different things. Taping your mouth shut so you can breathe through your nose actually makes your oxygen levels go higher, which also gives you more energy. That's what I think. Mental health is a journey. And then mental wellness is really your advisors and your mentors. And that could be your spouses, your kids. In my case, my executive team. I'm also very fortunate to be part of a very wonderful CEO peer group. Those are your peers that really have a way of impacting you. And then mental strengthening is the tough one. That's why I say it starts at the bottom, because that's the actual work. That's the tough part. You work out, you do all that. That's mental health. Everything you do to make sure your body is completely prepared as much as you physically can to the best of your ability. Now, I say that saying it's okay if you have cheats here and there. I'm not like psycho like that. And then wellness, everybody will say, well, I don't have advisors. You can go get them, and I understand if you can't afford them, but I think that's very crucial. Mentors, mentees, but then the mental strengthening is the actual work. I think reading is very important. I actually think even better yet, depending on the type of learner you are, I'm a huge fan of Audible because I myself, because I got tested, am a very good audio learner. So believe it or not, listening to books and then taking notes and writing them down, I retain faster than some people are visual who have to sit there and look. So it's really, you need to lean into who you are and what you come to realize in that strengthening part of mental strengthening, the reading, the videos, the work that you put in. I would even consider that from a social media standpoint. I spend about an hour or two every day commenting on things. So that's not another person doing that. That's actually me. So some days I do a lot more than others. That just goes to show you how my schedule may get thrown up. I do try to time block, but as a leader, we all know that I may get yanked in certain directions. But that's really what I consider is one of the best things and that's one of the things we teach here is the mental fitness and always leaning into it. But yeah, you need some sort of that combination. And I think more than anything, you just got to know how to hang up your ego. I mean, that's usually what gets you in trouble, and that's okay. We all have it. We all do things that we later look back, but don't take it personal. Even if you do something, move on, own it, and then move forward. But from a business standpoint, one thing that we started doing 6-7 years ago, and I had to show the way, was social media. I don't think people really knew how impactful that could be, and it's extremely impactful. I mean, just look at the Taylor Swift giveaway we did. That was a little insane.
Right.
Why don't you talk about that for a second?
Hey, take a couple minutes and talk about that. That was good.
That was just an idea we had. I was like, you know what? After TAG, I thought of so many memories that I created with my parents and what we do. And my father, how he would take me to University of Georgia football games. The couple Saturdays he would get off a year because my father worked 6 days a week till he passed. And I was like, all right, what can we do to create memories for parents with their kids or a spouse or a significant, whatever, whoever you pick as a plus one. Well, I didn't, look, I'm not a Swiftie. I did not know how popular she is. Like, I floored. And I didn't really realize it till how many demands came in. And then at first we were going to sell it. But then I said, okay, let's make an impact. That's going to be more important.
Right.
And let's make it fun. Let's do a giveaway instead of who you pick. So instead of picking winners or losers, let the little electronic system spit it out. You win, you don't. I'm sorry. We will be doing it ongoing out. I mean, I'll be announcing later today or tomorrow about Ed Sheeran. We'll be doing that one, and then Beyonce in August. So, we put it out there on social, and it went crazy.
Right.
Crazy. And yeah, I mean, I had people texting me on the side, hey, come on, just pick me. Don't let anybody know. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to do that.
You're like, dude, I can't do that. It's not legit.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I went on Sunday. I went to be a good host. It's not my style of music. I'm a rock and rap kind of guy. So I grew up in inner city Atlanta here. So that's kind of the music I like.
There you go.
Not knocking it. It's just because I do like Ed Sheeran a good amount, and he's a little bit of that pop, but he's also guitars and other things.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And my daughter, my oldest, got me into Harry Styles, and I haven't gone and bought anything, but I do appreciate him, and I think he's actually extremely talented and good. So I kind of lean more towards that, and she does too. So she kind of really influenced me on that over Taylor Swift. But it was nuts, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, people crying.
Yeah.
I'm just like.
Right. That changes the world, man. I mean, that literally, the amount of attention you got on that was just off the chain.
And it was just for fun. I mean, I think you got to always have fun in life. You got to really enjoy who you're with, and you got to enjoy the moments. You never know. And this is not being morbid. This is just being very uncomfortable when I say this. We never know when our last moment is. So don't be on your deathbed with some regrets. My father did have regrets, and he told me. Right. And at least he was honest enough to admit it. And that's why he said, take care of your health. Now it's your turn to take care of the family, take care of your family. Because my oldest was 1 year old when my father passed. Okay. And that was before the next two. So you just got to really lean into that and really enjoy the moment. And it was fun. I mean, people would profusely thank me. I have a weird, It's not that I don't appreciate the thank yous. I really do. I really do. But one thank you's, like I always tell people, more than enough. But I understand the gratitude and I can lean in it. Mm-hmm. I just have a certain belief and responsibility that I'm supposed to do some of these things. So it's kind of like when people say to me, "Oh, it's great how you lead us and what you're doing," and I'm like, "Well, I am the CEO. That is my job. That is actually what I got to do."
I'm kind of the leader over here.
I mean, it's the buck stops with me. Everything is 100% on my butt. Yeah. Anything that goes right or wrong, I had something to do with it or I allowed it to happen. And you just got to really own that. And I get that people say they haven't worked for other leaders that are similar. I think there's a lot of great leaders out there that do that. It's just, unfortunately, somewhere around the equation, the ghost of leaders past is a legit thing. It's something got burned in their head. You know, I heard that from Rene Rodriguez. The ghost of leaders past, and that's legit. And you got to also lean in, and you can't really get mad about that. You got to give people grace because it could be a traumatic experience, and you're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of it there.
Well, in a previous interview that I was looking at as we do our research, Bobby and I always joke, you know, we do more research now than we ever did in high school and college, right? So we actually look up things. Right, exactly. So one of the questions that they had asked you in the past was, what is the best way for a CEO to authentically connect with their employees? And you came back and said, it's just pretty simple. Just talk and have a genuine interest to hear what the other people have to say.
Yep, radical candor. You know, you don't have to be mean about it. I think that's where radical candor gets a lot of a bad rap for transparency. You just have to be delicate, empathize, you know, understand how it feels like to be in their shoes, but you still have a duty. Even more than a job, I think it's a duty that you owe them, even if they don't like what you have to hear, because too many times people sugarcoat because they don't feel like they can accept that. It's no different than the parents that don't let their kids fail. They're really setting them up for failure. And I'm not saying it's fun. You know, God rest my father's soul. He once said something that still is ingrained. I mean, I must have been like 16 or 17. And like anybody else, you know, I was a bonehead, especially at that age. And I said something to I did something. And he's like, "Oh, son, I wish you didn't have to lower your head and run into a brick wall." He goes, "I'm just glad that your head's hard." And that's true. You got to let people make those mistakes, and it's okay, and not shun them for it. I think that's. I think a lot changed behaviorally in leadership when it comes to working for a moral hazard. I think 08 really changed those dynamics, and you're seeing more and more of that. Now, at the same token, that doesn't mean you coddle. I think sometimes people mistaken kindness as a weakness. There's a big difference between kind and nice. I think sometimes nice is more of trying to get somebody to like you. And kindness is more about you respect each other. And you can draw lines and put up boundaries. And I think at nice, and you hear that in sales, oh, you got to get people to like you. No, you got to get people to respect you. There's a big difference. And sometimes the best way to respect is truly by saying no, but not using it as the sales techniques you've heard out there that I think are nauseating, like, oh, you got to do the takeaway. I think that's crap. I mean, I think you can be very intentional, which is what leads to authenticity if you just tell them.
Yeah.
Right.
I had the conversation today with somebody. They were talking about sales in general. Like, oh, I'm not good at sales because I don't. That ask that, you know, I got to get them to ask to buy this or use me for this service. And I had the conversation. It was, no, it's not about the product or whatever it is you're trying to sell. You're selling you. It's your relationship with them. Sure. That's the vehicle to accomplish whatever you need to do, whether it's mortgages or a realtor or whatever it is. You know, it comes down to I had actually never heard the radical candor, but the over communication, right? The empathy and just listening. That's what relationship building is, and it doesn't matter if it's sales or if it's your team members working for you or your interpersonal relationships. It's the radical candor. Yeah,
exactly. And the thing is, talk about sales is. So my wife is our operations manager here, Eddy. Liz, you've seen her on video going back and forth with communication. But she's always telling me, well, I'm not good at sales. I'm like, babe, you sell me on something about every hour of the day. Like you're literally selling me on something of what we should do or where we should go and all this. So I think it's just how people mentally have it in their head, right? and you know, whether they think they're a good salesperson or not, but everyone's selling something, right? Everyone's selling something.
Sure.
So going back to the business thing, Eddie, and we want to be respectful of your time. So EPM turning the corner the past couple of years, like, what are some of the goals that you foresee with Equity Prime moving forward as we're in this time where thousands and thousands of retail LOs are coming over to the wholesale channel? What do you foresee over the next year, 2 years for EPM?
I mean, I obviously think there's going to be a lot of growth because we're well prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a lot of the hard decisions in the middle of last year when it wasn't fun or sexy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what's crazy is I still thought I did it 2 or 3 months later than I should have. But
right.
I'm always going to hold myself to as high of a standard as possible. I think there's a lot of growth for the people that hang in, not just EPM, just in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, interest rates are higher. At some point in time, they will come down, even if they're for a short while, and that will trigger a refi boom. You know, especially nowadays, it's such a payment society.
Mm-hmm.
I said this back in 21, and people thought I was crazy. I actually think the higher interest rates were a good thing because I was very concerned for the first-time home buyer that we're a payment society, not a rate society, and I don't think people realize that. They did not care that the loan amounts kept going up because, oh man, my payment's this. Well, now they care all of a sudden about interest rates. No, they care about the payment. If you somehow made up a number like, oh, you know, your rate's at 3%, but you give the payment of like, if it's say at 6, oh man, that's great. I got a rate at 3. And it's a psychological thing that I think a lot of people are just not aware of subconsciously. So I think it was needed because in 21, it was crazy. Over asking price, closing cash. No, that's just not fundamentally sound. And what I am very optimistic about is there's not a lot of supply and there's a lot of demand. This is the greatest demographics that this country has ever had and will for the next 10 to 15 years. So I think a lot of people, as long as they make the tough decisions, and yeah, you may have to shed certain staffing, you may have to go more self-service, you may have to go where people need to do a little bit more of their own work than having an assistant for every 5 loans. That may be some of the things you have to do. You definitely have to invest in tech, and we're really excited about our tech that's rolling out here in a couple weeks. You got to do that. You know, you got to really make the flywheel move faster. But a lot of it is going to go down to leadership. I mean, with the leadership goes any organization, and a lot of our turnaround is because we had great leaders that started stepping into their role, and then we got new leaders, and we got new people that believed in the vision. So you just got to lean into it. I think the industry is going to do very good. It's just you can't do $4 trillion back-to-back years and not expect a little bit of a hangover. I mean, come on.
Right.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. And you know what? I'm so glad you said that because, you know, it's times like these where you really have to lean into it because we had these conversations in team meetings, Bobby, a couple of years ago. Remember, I would sit around and say, hey, enjoy this now.
Every day.
Because it's going to stop.
On the daily.
Right?
Yeah.
So just be ready. But like now, for those who can hang in there, it's an excellent opportunity to go build new relationships, strengthen current relationships, going out there, building, recruiting, because just like EPM is setting, you know, you're setting them up, when the next wave comes, you guys are going to be ready, right?
Yeah.
And for those other owners out there, when that tide comes again, you know, if rates drop a point for a while, and if they drop another point, I mean, there's going to be so much business out there that we're not even going to know what to do with. So
if they drop 2 points, it'll be a lot, not just rate and term. You will then, all of a sudden, people won't have a problem getting rid of their 3.5, even if they go to 4.5 or whatever for cash out. So don't. I was in the cash out game in this industry in 2004 when the rate and terms dried up, but cash outs and purchases did. Now, some people unfortunately use their house as an ATM, but once again, that goes down to self-responsibility. I think a lot of people at times do not want to acknowledge that, but you know, one thing that I learned very well from my parents is that freedom has 2 components. You know, we have the Statue of Liberty, so everybody always talks about the liberty part, but very few people ever talk about the self-responsibility. And I wish that, you know, on the East Coast we have the Statue of Liberty. I'd love it on the West Coast if we had the Statue of Self-Responsibility, because that way we have things that people can go visit. And it really does represent, you know, freedom and what it's about. And innately, it is a human thing that's needed.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So, Eddy, really quick. So I could do it too at the end, but I think it'd be better coming from the horse's mouth. Why don't you spend just a little bit and talk about your podcast, Empowering People More? I mean, really good because it's not just mortgage stuff. There are a lot of lessons that are going in there from leadership to business strategy, how to win. So maybe just talk for a little bit about the podcast.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of storytelling. And that's really what everybody has a story, because that's one thing that we all share. We've all had our ups, our downs, our scars. We are all doing the best that we can. So my focus on the podcast was about people that empower others. And really, from a leadership and different industries, it's not just our industry. I'm really looking to grow it in different industries as well, authors, everything of that nature, because this is what brings a lot of value out there and from people to hear from different folks. Because you know this, you can listen to one person and relate to them or grab something, then you grab something from somebody else. So it's really about giving people different tools, not just, there is no one size fits all. There really isn't. It's just constantly, like we said, getting 1% better, just constantly just getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Yeah, sure, there's days that you take huge leaps or something happens that's a huge leap, but I promise you that was built on a gazillion little wins. That's why I say you got to celebrate your wins. I think every day you need to find your 5 to 10 wins. Now, you don't need to make stuff up, but if you haven't worked out before and all of a sudden you start working out, then that's a win. Now, once it becomes part of your regimen, it's no longer a win, so something else is. Some wins that I think still count is how much you read or you listen to books every day and you work on yourself, because there's nowhere safer than to be with yourself. And self-care really is about that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I always tell people I want them to be the most selfish person they can be. I heard it from Denzel Washington, and he said, because the most selfish thing you can do is make yourself better, because everybody around you miraculously will have a better life. And so be selfish, not self-centered. There is a difference. They look a lot similar, but they're not.
We've got a buddy who's been on the show that we reference him all the time. His name's Sean Casey, 3-time Major League Baseball All-Star. He said the most selfish thing a person can do is along the same lines. The most selfish thing a person can do is do something for somebody else, because that's what makes you feel better than anything possibly could. So I love the same thing you were just saying.
And you can't do that, in my belief, if you're not working on yourself, because
absolutely
you need that reassurance, and then it makes it even that much better. And then it's like a bond, like that camaraderie that's shared. And you never know when they're going to be there for you too. That's what I always tell people. You'd be shocked at what moments, people will be there for you. Even if it's just you've had a rough day, they don't even know it, or you've had a day you're just like, dude, what's going on? And then you hear from somebody out of nowhere.
Sure.
Just never know.
Right. Well, I love the fact, because you share this quite a bit, but you're an avid reader, and do you want to share what's your goal right now? Because it was some crazy number of books that you're getting through. Yep.
100?
I'm checking every 4 months. I was at 31 at the 4-month window, which was because my reading's from the 16th of December to the 15th of December. So my year is not one, because when I decided to start doing that journey a couple years ago, it just happened to be around December something. So I said, all right, I'm not waiting until the new year. So my reading fiscal year, as I'll call it, is different.
Nice.
So on the 16th of April, I looked at it and I was at 31 books. And what's crazy is last year I read it was 35 or 38, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And that was 2 weeks ago, and I've already gone through more. And that's the one thing why I love not just the reading part, but really the listening to books, because it actually makes you a better active listener. Because you're so trained, you can actually hear things at faster speeds and actually know where the conversations are going. So then you don't interrupt. A lot of people interrupt not because they're a-holes. They need to get something out before they forget it. But that active listening puts you on okay, this is where it's going, I think. And if not, I can ask questions or engage or then make a statement that may be rhetorical. But either way, our dialogue can improve. But yeah, I said screw it, I did a lot of things this year because I wanted a lot of growth. I gave up alcohol for the year. I gave up potatoes. I gave up bread. I was going to give up cigars, even though I only smoke 2-3 a year. But when UGA won back-to-back national championship, I decided to have another one.
Right.
Last year, 40 years of pain. After 40 years of pain, I'm enjoying this run right now. I always thought this was possible. I always thought we were a sleeping giant. It's kind of nice. I'm not going to lie. So
that's phenomenal.
Seeing some of our many players go to other teams and them keep winning, I'm like anything, you want your team to win. So
feels good.
I get it. So, but then I decided in its place to give up chips and salsa, more chips. I love chips and salsa, Mexican chips and salsa. Oh my God, I love it. But I gave that up. For Lent, I gave up cookies. Now the newest thing is I gave up warm showers, 6-minute cold shower. Who knows? I'm looking at ways. I really want 2023 to be a great year of mind, body, and spirit growth. And I think sometimes you got to really take things out just to stay focused. So I can tell you that it's making my life better right now. Even in some of these most stressful times, my stress is actually going down. That allows me to stay more focused and be what I call a wartime CEO.
Love
to
that.
keep that focus instead of a good time CEO. I just think that as a leader, you got to stay more focused. And just because when the good times come, it doesn't mean I'm going to drive a hard ship, but I haven't driven a hard ship during the tough times. I've driven hey, this is what we got to do, and this is the objective. But, I haven't been down people's throats and then pedal off, kind of that leadership, ups and down that some people do. You just try to keep it as patient and calm as you can. And more importantly, focused, hyper-focused.
Well, and the thing is, Eddy, like you bring a lot of like smiles to Bobby and I, because we say a lot of similar things, but your clarity and your discipline is off the chain, and that just is the reason why that you guys are killing it as a company, both personally and then business-wise for the wholesale channel, which is amazing. And we truly appreciate all you do for us. And the one thing, because again, we know you're busy and we're not going to keep you too much longer, but before we let you off the hook, man, one of the favorite things that I saw that you had written was that your family is more important than oxygen. So would you like to touch base a little bit on, your beautiful bride, Shannon, I believe, and Gracie, Tripp, and Emery?
So
the big four.
This is a controversial belief system of mine, what I'm about to say, but I'm not scared. People will say what they want to say, but that's okay. When people are like, you got to search for your why, your purpose and mission. I'm going to be honest. Like, your purpose and mission can go on pause if your oxygen's cut off. And what I mean by that is, Darren, I don't care how great you feel. If I try to drown you right now, you would just try to breathe. You wouldn't care about anything else. So I think your family, and your family doesn't have to be blood. It has to be whoever's there for you and supporting you and you love. That's your oxygen. So to say that's your why, I think you're actually discounting them. I think it has to be that deep.
Right.
That you've got to love them more than oxygen. So in other words, would I take a bullet for one of my kids? Absolutely. So that they could live a life. Yeah. Would they miss me? Of course they would. However, I don't want their life cut short over mine. I've had a wonderful 46 years. If tomorrow's my last day, I've lived some amazing dreams. I've lived in the greatest experiment ever at some of the greatest times, and I've had fabulous memories. So obviously I plan on breaking 100. However, you just don't know what your day is going to bring you. And that's why I say, I love you more than oxygen. I say that to my kiddos all the time. Now, they probably don't know right now, or they probably think Dad's weird, but I don't care.
Right.
I could care less. So
right.
It's those moments they'll understand later. It's like everything I'm investing in my kiddos and everybody today. Shannon, with Shannon it's different, obviously, because we've been together for a while. But with your kids, I'm think about the impression my father still has on me, and he's been passed. So it's more of the investments now you make is like building a garden. You're just planting the seeds and watering it, and then it'll flourish. So they'll remember in those moments when not to make a bad decision, truly a poor decision for themselves in those times. So.
Do you ever
That's
find
where a lot of times people say their why, and I don't judge them. I'm just like, dude, that's your oxygen. It's deeper than that, and your oxygen's where your inner spirituality lies. So you're kind of discounting them. Not judging you. I'm just letting you know that maybe that's some awareness you should bring to yourself.
I love it. Well, and one day your kids will have some of the same glowing things to say that you have said about your parents, man. So it's truly leaving a legacy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's all you really can do for humanity. I think a lot of people don't take their role in this world because they don't believe they can make a difference. But What happens if Lincoln, MLK, Mandela, Gandhi, what happens if all those type of leaders thought that way?
Mm-hmm.
You really don't know what you can make an impact unless you let yourself.
Exactly.
That's
exactly
a great way to end the show, I think.
That's awesome, man.
Good stuff. All right, everybody. So Eddy's social media has videos and educational advice on leadership, personal development, mortgage industry stuff, lots more. You can find him at Eddy G. Perez Jr. on all platforms. That's Eddy with a Y, EDDY. Learn more about Eddy and Equity Prime Mortgage at epm.net, and make sure to follow him across all social media platforms. This has been the Always Be Cool podcast with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
Great being here, man. Eddy, you slayed it. Thanks again for hanging out with us, bro.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Darren. It was an honor. I'm glad that we were able to do it. I greatly appreciate it. I hope to your listeners out there, they get some value out of it and something that they understand, that we're all just regular folks and we need to lean into that.
100%.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Stay on the line for a second, Eddy, and we'll stop recording. Sure. All right, guys, this has been the Always Be Cool podcast. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Darren and Bobby thank you from the bottom of their hearts.
They hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave them a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in our community.
Also, feel free to let DC and BK know which business or community leaders you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments or on social media. See you next time for a new episode. And remember, always be cool.
This podcast is powered by Summit Lending, NMLS number 1850081, Equal Housing Lender.